On my way out of here, out of Northfield Park, heading back. I'm going to stay overnight and head out in the morning. Obviously, we got horses to race tomorrow, Georgian Downs. I just finished all my videos, and it dawned on me that, again, this week, I did not mention Kings County. Embarrassing, to say the least, considering how well this horse is racing and how unbelievably good he raced this week in Scioto. I ramble on, and well, you guys are going to see. You're going to see in the opening this week. So take it for what it's worth. Please insert Kings County into the opening this week. Man, I talk about all our horses that were doing well, and I failed to mention the horse that raced probably as good. Only outdone by Patrick DePerana, I think, this week was Kings County. His race was insanely good. Now, we're going to talk about tonight, obviously, Sweet on Pete. This is one of these times where you look at the race after the race and say, what if? What if I just let her saunter down the backstretch 28-3? My thinking was simple. I knew she could trot in 54 and a piece tonight. I wasn't going to be out-trotted down the lane. And I didn't want to put Sweet on Pete on the run trying to come 27-3. I would rather come 29 flat, 28-3, and beat the two horses in behind me fair and square with sheer power rather than trying to out-finesse them. You've seen her made a break on Mike Wilder in Miami Valley, and I thought we had her good. We schooled her in 55. I thought she was in the right frame of mind. 57-3, I started her up down the backstretch because I didn't know how out of gear she'd get in the last turn. And if I get collared in the last turn out of gear, she's more likely to make a break. So I don't regret, not even for a second. You guys know me. I'll take blame. If I'm to blame, I have no problem, ripping myself up after a race. But I don't regret opening her up down the backstretch. I thought at the moment, in that moment in time, it was the only way to win. I knew the two in behind me, definitely Kersey Dream, and I knew Toes in My Water was somewhere there. Those are both Sire Stake fillies also. I knew they were the ones to beat, and I didn't want to give them the race, but I didn't want to get my filly beat either. I didn't want to give it up. I didn't want to go 126-4 and have two of them scream by me down the lane simply because they could trot a quarter and 27 and a piece, and maybe our filly didn't. So obviously, looking at the line and then looking at the race, the obvious question would be, why didn't you just go 28-3 down the backstretch? Yeah, but I stand behind what happened in the race, for what it's worth. Raced great, 54-4 she trotted. Pretty hard to be too upset with Sweet on Pete tonight for a filly that's been off to a rocky start this year. Jason and I were talking after the race, a number of things we talked about. First off, either do we go down to Scioto for the Sire Stakes or stay for the Buckeye here at home? I think everything taken into looking at everything, stepping back and looking at everything, I think it's smarter to play the Buckeye role here than go down there. And Jason made a good point. The Sire Stakes fillies every year in Colts weed themselves out. You'll have horses drop back into the Buckeye and they'll stay there the rest of the season. If we race in a couple of Buckeyes and do as well as we hope we'll do, at that point she can go to the Sire Stakes. Maybe it'll come here also. Not maybe, it will come here also, and we can take a look at it in that context. But for now, I believe it's the only logical play is to race her here in the Buckeye her next start. Now, actually, that's not true. Her next start, I said to Jason, I don't want to get into a position where we're schooling her or training her. I want her back in a race scenario. And he said, well, Anthony, there's no races here next week for her. That's just the way it is. They didn't write this class back on Saturday. They made it for Colts only. So there's nowhere really to race her. We got looking Thursday and Friday at the Meadows. There's classes written that Sweet on Pete fits, so we could race her there. I would rather race her Saturday back Friday than school her or train her at Northfield. This is one of these situations where I believe this filly needs more racing situations. Racing, not training, not schooling, not qualifying. They're not the same as the rigors of a race. They just aren't. And I think she needs to be in a race. So I am going to push to have her race next Thursday or next Friday at the Meadows and then come back here for the Buckeye the following week or 8 days later. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And although, back in 5 days off that mile might seem tough, well, it is. But I really believe that Sweet on Pete needs to be pushed. She needs to be pushed back into a position of racing, and babying her now's the time for her to work a little harder. So, and I look at this from my perspective. If she's my horse, I don't care about the purse money or anything else. I want her worked right now. I want her set up for the entire summer into the fall. I was happy with what she did tonight, but I want to see her build on it. And I think the best way is just to put her back in. So that's my take on Sweet on Pete. 1, the drive from me tonight, and 2, where she's headed her next start. I'm going to make a phone call to Tim here in a minute and talk to him. In a perfect world, we'd race her back next Friday. Now that puts me in a tough spot because we have all our babies in Ontario qualifying next Friday. So I don't really know how we're going to navigate this, but at the same token, worst case scenario, Mike Wilder's driven her once. He knows her. We can make sure that the hobbles are on her proper. Listen, we can send the bike over she raced in tonight to race her. It's not the end of the world. It's not that hard to do that. But we need to get her, I believe we need to get her raced. So I'm sure we're going to have some dialogue about that over the next couple of days. But at the end of the day, I understand racing her back short off a big mile is a tough thing to do. But I do believe she needs to be pushed. So rather than waiting 14, 15 days to race, there's pros and cons for both, but the voice in my head right now is saying, I think this filly needs some work. She doesn't need to be on the front going 1:54. Drop her in where she, they're going to go in 56 and a piece probably in that class. Drop her in and race her like a normal horse, but get her raced. That's my 2 cents on it as I leave the track and I leave Northfield right now heading back to the house. So a good night tonight. I just watched No Free Lunch. We got to do something with No Free Lunch. This paced 49-4, 50 tonight, finished 6th. No more. This is wasted time and wasted money for this horse. So I'll talk to Harry about it. I don't know if he drops. Now he's got no money made last 5 for the most part. Does he drop way down? Because there's not a much softer spot for No Free Lunch. I don't see him being entered in Ontario next week. It's one of these very, very tough situations where he is not good enough and it is not his fault. He's a 4-year-old horse that just paced 49-4 or 150 and got no money. Again, last 5 starts, he got a couple of thousand made. I don't care how fast he's going or where he's racing. He does not belong in that class. So if we can't find a better class for him, he too will be leaving also. I'll be looking. Again, we're going to Kentucky for the end of the month. We are going there to race, for sure, Unbeatable Kemp and Blue Bayou Dio. If No Free Lunch heads that way, as I believe Walk on the Moon is, and potentially Elvis Patrick, I think there's a spot there also for him. But again, he has to have a spot where he can race every week and race for decent money. 1, he has to race for money. It's like he's too good a horse to race for nothing. And 2, he has to have a place that he can race consistently. If we can find a track that offers decent money and consistent racing for No Free Lunch, that's where he's going. So with that, I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to get up tomorrow around 10 a.m. and head back to Ontario. We got 4 in tomorrow night. If anybody's in Barrie, I don't know what the track's like right now, but happy to sit down and talk with anybody. It used to be nice. You used to be able to go over after the races and have a beer in the grandstand. I don't know if any of that stuff's there anymore. It's been so long since I was inside Georgian Downs. But our summer's here now. So anytime I get a chance to sit down and have a beer with our clients or just sit down and talk with them, I'd be happy to. So with that, I'll let you guys go. I hope you're having a good weekend. I am. Philly raced good tonight. I certainly do not feel bad in the least. Not about how I drove her, not about how she raced. I think it will go a long way for the rest of the season for Sweet on Pete. Take care, everybody.